All right, we'll go ahead and get started then. We have more people joining us, so hopefully everybody can get in quickly. I want to thank you for spending an hour or so with me to learn a few tips and tricks about building, maintaining, and presenting a service catalog. I do recognize that around this time, especially in my time zone, that everybody's pretty busy or out to lunch or whatever, so I really want to, again, thank you for taking the time out to kind of sit with us and listen to me talk about, some of the things that we've learned from our clients and from experience on building an IT service catalog for those that don't have one or haven't really formalized one. My name is Billy Wilson, just to introduce myself, and I'm a solutions architect with Cireson. A couple of housekeeping items real quick. This is a non-interactive webinar, so if you have questions, please post them in the question space in your GoToMeeting applet, and we can address those at the end of the webinar during the Q&A session. And if we can't answer your question immediately or we run out of time, you can email me. My email address is right there on the screen, billy.wilson@saracen.com, and I can follow up with you with an answer. I am recording this webinar, and it will be available out on our Team Saracen Vimeo site, hopefully today, but if not, in the next day or so. So if you miss it or you want a colleague to look at it, you can check it out there. So let's take a look at the agenda. So I'm going to start off by taking a few minutes to explain who Cireson is, who we are, and what we do. We're going to look at what exactly is a service catalog. We're going to talk about why you should bother building a service catalog, why you should have one, what's the benefit, what's in it for you, what's in it for your company. And we're going to talk about how to create a service catalog, where to start, where do I begin on this? And then we're going to talk about presenting the service catalog to the business, how they can access it. And then we're also going to talk about a couple tips for actually maintaining and improving your service catalog. So let's get started with who we are. So who is Saracen? Saracen began in 2012 as a consulting company of experts in all things System Center. And after kind of identifying a few gaps in Service Manager usability while working with our clients, we built a few free apps that many folks found a lot of value in. And pretty soon from there, we turned into a full-fledged software company, bringing you applications to help maximize what you get out of System Center. So we built the majority of our apps around Service Manager and service management initially, but then we began expanding into the asset management space because we recognized that Service Manager had a really nice CMDB with connectors to bring in data from Active Directory, ConfigMan, and OpsMan. So we, in turn, decided to build an asset management solution to really take advantage of all that integration and extensibility. And after a while, we began building a few free apps to also help make working with ConfigMan easier, which led us to eventually, and we just released it earlier this year, building a web-based portal for Configuration Manager to actually allow you to share the ConfigMan toolset to the rest of IT with a minimum of security and configuration and really something easy for them to be able to use to do their job. And with all of this software development we've done, we really haven't strayed away from continuing to build on our foundation of having a world-class consulting practice. So we have experts, consultants globally, different places, and we still do a good business there. So we're headquartered in San Diego with employees pretty much across the US, Europe, and APAC regions. We have about over 1,200 customers in about 63 countries and over 3 million licensed end users. We've logged over 43,000 hours of consulting time with our experts, and that is a lot of experience in doing what we do and working with customers on service management, asset management, and such. And it's that experience that allows us to do webinars such as this, where we take things that we've learned and we're able to share that with you. We have a 99% renewal rate, which really goes to show that we kind of put in the extra mile for our clients so that they stick with us. And at the bottom here on this slide, you can see that we've gotten accolades from Inc. 500 and others. And if you really want to see more about that stuff, you can go to our website. So here are a few of our clients across the globe. You'll notice that our technology kind of runs a gamut across most industries instead of being in kind of a niche corner. And mainly because service and asset management is really across all markets. So where they go, we go. And you can see we have people in we have customers in banking and finance. We have customers in oil and gas and healthcare and different levels of government, local, state, federal, and retail. So this slide kind of shows you how Cireson really fits in with the System Center stack. So at the bottom layer you can see is the infrastructure layer, and that can consist of cloud and virtual systems as well as on-prem and physical servers and any manner of hybrid configuration that you want to develop. And on top of that sits System Center, and System Center we regard as the core engine that provides us with the data and workflow and automation, and then our products are designed to basically help, make the user experience a lot better than it is, and give you more to be able to maximize your environment for what you really want to get out of System Center. So let's kind of get to the heart of this webinar, the service catalog. It's been my experience that most organizations that don't already have a mature ITIL structured service catalog tend to struggle with putting one together, especially if their department's been established for a while. It's easier to put one together when you're first building your IT organization, but a lot of people don't get to this point where they want to really identify and quantify and mature a true service catalog until they've been in business for a while. It makes it even a little harder to do. So kind of the two usual triggers for having to eventually put a service catalog down on paper, as it were, are somebody in management or at the executive level has decided to adopt ITIL best practices and either brings in consulting to do that, or drops a book on somebody's desk and says, here, learn ITIL and figure out a way to get us to implement it into our system. Or they decide that they want to have a self-service portal so end users can, instead of having to pick up a phone or send an email, can go in there and request services from IT, or actually a combination of both. And when those come together, it's usually at that point where you sit down and go, okay, I need to have a structured service catalog to know what it is that we do. So let's see what a service catalog is defined as. ITIL defines a service catalog, and for those that aren't familiar with ITIL, ITIL is the IT infrastructure library that was designed out of the UK, and it's basically a framework of best practices and procedures to be able to maximize the value that IT brings to the business. So there's a lot to it. I mean, there are modules and modules that go along with ITIL, but the one that we're going to focus on today is, of course, the service catalog. And ITIL defines the service catalog as a database or structured document with information about all live IT services, including those available for deployment. I'm going to break it down into the short version, which is basically what you, as an IT department, currently provide in services to your company's business units. So what is it they ask you for that you give? That's pretty much it. And the one thing to kind of mention here is that a true service catalog is something that is agreed upon by the business as bringing and providing value to the organization. So it's not something that IT just comes up with, this is what we do. I mean, it is a collaborative effort for IT to say these services provide value to the business, and the business to acknowledge and agree to that. So the next question is, why should I bother with a service catalog? What is in it for me as an IT organization? What is in it for the business? So here are some of the benefits, not limited to, but some of the benefits I'm going to list here are you increase your analyst's efficiency. And what I mean by that is a service catalog actually allows you to provide structure to the analysts in your organization, something to point to show them where they need to be spending their time and basically allow them to stay in their lane and be able to focus on the tasks that you've implemented that provide value to the business instead of being kind of all over the place. Another benefit is it really helps in annual budget time. So having a mature service catalog makes it a lot easier to determine budgeting when you can associate line item budget entries with specific services. You know, service catalogs make it easier to help you to set up trends analysis, which will help IT managers target where the budget dollars are needed. Next is allow for structured automation. When you can list out your services, when you have those down, then you can begin to prioritize and develop automation where it's practical to help lower the time and effort to complete tasks. You know, an example at the very least is the ability to automate the routing of support and services to bypass triage by the service desk when it makes sense, such as when somebody calls in and or uses a self-service portal or some manner and needs to or is having issues with a monitor or something like that. That's not something that a level 1 service desk person can actually work with. So if you're using a self-service portal and that's part of your service catalog, you can actually set it up to automatically route that to the local desktop support, then it can actually walk over there and figure out what's going on, saving time for all involved, time for the support technicians and time for the person affected with the issue to get back to doing what it is they need to be doing. And lastly, time to success. This is a phrase that was given to me by a colleague, and I really like the way he defined it. He basically said it's the amount of time saved by end users to receive the service that they need to get on with their work and be profitable for the company. And that really resonates because, you know, for most organizations, IT typically does not generate revenue for the company. So the more time that IT can save end users who actually do generate revenue on getting their IT services and support faster, the more time that those end users can actually spend generating revenue, which is, you know, what brings value to the company. So how do I create a service catalog? And I meant to mention this earlier in the webinar, but when I show you examples of the things that we've seen, things that we do, I'm going to be using Service Manager and Cireson. Service Manager as the IT service management system, and Cireson Self-Service Portal is the self-service interface. Most of the concepts that we're going to talk about here kind of transcend any given vendor for IT service management, but you know, pretty much the bottom line is Service Manager and Saracen is what I know. It's what I do. It's what a lot of you are using. So that's what I'm going to be using for doing demonstrations and stuff like that, just to let you know. So how do I create a service catalog? This is where a lot of people get stuck. This is actually what kind of prompted us to kind of to put this content together as a webinar, because we see that customers struggle with this a lot. You know, whether they're have a very young IT organization and they want to get this ready to go, or whether they've got dropped into the ITIL game and need to put something down on paper. You know, this is how do I create it is generally where they have struggles. And I personally spent time in meetings for this very purpose with IT management in a former company that I worked for. And these meetings were pretty unproductive initially because there's a tendency, especially with ITIL, you know, being this big entity that it appears to be, to focus on like a grand vision for what they ultimately want their service catalog to be on one side, rather than what they actually provide now. And then on another side in that meeting, they also have a tendency to get kind of mired down in the minutia rather than sticking with what they do and what they know, what they already have. So while I'm not saying there doesn't need to be some forward thinking, because there really does during this process, but the best practice is to focus, the majority of your time on what you're doing right now. And we're going to talk about how to do that. So the first step in setting this up is to determine if your IT service management system, if your service catalog is only going to be an IT service catalog. So is IT the only one that's using your ticketing system is actually the quickest way to ask that question. Or is IT going to be the only one that uses your ticketing system? And my previous company, that was not the case. IT was actually the keeper of the system and the owner of the system, but other departments such as application development, HR, accounting, facilities, all used it as their ticketing system. So that's where the forward thinking came in when we were getting to structure our service catalog, because the way a service catalog is structured, especially in Service Manager, and I'll show you that in a second, you need to kind of keep your mind on, being able to differentiate between what's going to be the IT portion of the service catalog and what's going to be theirs, what's going to be the other departments. Next step is kind of the most commonly overlooked step in the process. Find out what you already provide by generating a report of the tickets that your department currently handles. I mean, to give you an example, how we came up with this is, I was in this meeting with these managers and these leads, and we were trying to whiteboard building the service catalog and what it's going to look like and how it's going to come down on paper. And there was all this kind of disparate functions and services and stuff like that. And finally I said, look, let's get a couple of people from the help desk in here and ask them what it is they are asked for. What do they do? What does the company ask of us? So we brought them in, we got a couple of examples, and then we ultimately ended up running a report of existing tickets, and we're able to tell, okay, this is what we provide now. So this is where we start. So gathering a report of existing tickets, sorted out by area, classification, or category, and that can help you determine where you are. And this is kind of an example of what a report might look like. This is more of a bar chart report. The kind of report I would gather would be a list, kind of a grid report, rows and columns. But this gives you an idea. So, you have counts, you have a time frame of July through October 2016, and at the bottom you have the different classifications such as group membership requests or domain access requests or software requests, hardware requests, that kind of thing. So, get that information in front of you. And then the next step is to import the ticket list into Excel. So this will be your blueprint, and this is what most of our clients have done, and I've gotten examples of this from our consultants, of getting this list into Excel so you can actually work with the data to build your service catalog. This allows you to stick to what you already do initially and then be able to expand your catalog after you go live because you've already built a framework within the spreadsheet. So once you have them in there, and I'm going to show you what an example spreadsheet looks like in a second, but once you have them in there, separate them by work item type if you don't already do that. Some ticketing systems just list everything as a ticket, so there's no differentiation of work item type as defined by ITIL. And just to go real quick through those, the different work item types are incident, which is something is broken, it's not working, an interruption of service, a service request, meaning I want or need something, but there is no interruption of service that is driving this request, problem, which is the root cause of a bunch of common incidents, change request, which is kind of obvious to the name, request for a change to the infrastructure or system. Release record, which kind of goes hand in hand with change request to be able to kind of control the release of whatever changes were made into production. And then an activity, which, those who are familiar with Service Manager know that an activity is a unit of action that is, used to support the workflow and to complete or resolve an incident, service request, problem, change request, and release record. So example of that would be a review activity for approval or a manual activity to do something as part of the workflow to provide the service or resolve the issue. Group all of these, once you have them on separate worksheets inside the spreadsheet, sort them into area, category, or classification, and then use that to structure your service catalog. So let's kind of see what that looks like in Excel. Before we look at Excel, I want to show you just real quick. Let me pull this up. I may have to renew this. Kind of from a self-service portal, what a service catalog kind of separating looks like. So inside of Service Manager, in the service catalog, you have what are called service offerings, you have what are called service offering categories, and then you have what are called request offerings. Now, from high level to low level, you have the service offering category, which categorizes the service offerings. Then a service offering is a grouping, a logical grouping of request offerings, and then the request offering is basically a form to request a specific service. So how that looks in the portal here is, in my example, I have my service offering category are IT requests and HR requests. So going back to what I mentioned earlier about forward thinking when you're first starting to set up your service catalog, in my example, because this is the way we had it in my former company, it wasn't just IT that used the ITSM tool, so I set my service offering categories to be the different departments that actually use it. So IT, HR, facilities, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the highest level. And then the next level is the types of services, service offerings. So here you can see under IT requests that's broken down into IT equipment requests, software requests, and access requests. And then when you drop into there, the service offering, you see all the request offerings that are associated with it, which would be an IT access request, add user security group, AD account password reset, and enrollment, so on and so forth. So that's kind of how a service catalog is structured from a technical standpoint inside of Service Manager. So let's take a look at the spreadsheet. So initially, you get your raw list of tickets that you drop into Excel. However you want to do it, you can use an existing report, or if you have somebody, a business intelligence analyst or somebody familiar with SQL, just run a quick SQL query to get this information. And generally what I do is, just have the work item ID, you can have status, but title, support group, and of course you need the area and classification. The two biggest things on this, or three biggest things on this, are the work item ID, so you can differentiate the work item types, the title, so you can see exactly what is being asked for from kind of a high-level standpoint, and then the classification that you already have. And this may change as you're building out your service catalog, we recognize that, but for the most part, you're using it to get the ball rolling, as it were. So you have these together. So I have the different worksheets down here that I've broken out, the different types of work items. So I've copied those into here. And what I've added in, and this is what a lot of our clients do, first of all, I did a sort by category, so I can go through there. Then I've added in these fields to be able to do my service offering category, the actual service offering for it, the request offering, title of whatever it's going to be, priority, because you're going to want to prioritize the order in which you build these. And you're generally going to want to prioritize it by the complexity and the amount of times it's being asked for. You know, how often you get this request. And actually in mine, I also threw in a column for questions, because if you want to use this to actually help build out your forms, you can do that as well. So you can boil this down into what your service catalog is going to look like, and then for each service, you can actually build out the questions that you're going to ask on your form if that's as far as you want to go. So for the first one, that shared printer doesn't work, you know, to use my example, this is going to fall under IT requests as a service offering category. The service offering is going to be under IT issues or IT printing issues, and then the request offering is going to be, you know, report network printer issue, and so on and so forth. So if I find that that's something that happens a lot, then I will begin my priority, probably start it with priority of 3, bump it up or down based on how I get here. And one of the things that you're going to do that most of the customers do is they start to identify a lot of the redundancies in here and be able to kind of weed those out and boil this down into what will ultimately look like, you know, a service catalog. And this is how you begin to really get it down on paper. So this is pretty much how you use Excel to kind of build this out and get yourself started and get something down on paper for what you want to do. And you want to do this for incidents and service requests starting out, and then you can start to fold in change, release management if you use it, problem management if you use it, and activities and everything that you have in here. So once you have your service catalog built and you know, everything's agreed upon, you've gotten buy-in from the business to say, yes, this is what we need to provide value to us and everything like that, then you have to have a way to present the service catalog to the business. And it's been my experience the best way to present your service catalog to end users is by implementing a web-based self-service portal. Again, going back to what I know and what I work with. This allows the end users to request services and support using structured forms that walk the end user through providing essential data required to fulfill their request or resolve their issue. And it also facilitates the automation of workflows to deliver these services faster. You know, meaning if you have a request offering, a form to be able to request access to an Active Directory group, if you can have them select the group and give the business justification, that information goes in a review activity for somebody to approve, and once it's approved, then you can use Orchestrator or PowerShell or some kind of form of automation to automatically add that person to the group, and therefore you don't have an analyst taking their time to jump into Active Directory and actually do all this. It's automatically taken care of for you. So that's an example of being able to automate. And I'm showing you some examples of what some of our clients and some of our consultants have built of simple self-service portal forms. That is one of the things that we found that is one of the keys to gaining adoption by end users over using email or phone calls, is that it needs to be simplified and easy to navigate, especially from the home page, so you can get to where you want to go. So let me give you the example. Let's go back to my example lab to show you that. So if I go to my home page on this, I've set up, and this is using the Cireson self-service portal and a bit of customization, I've set up a very simple home page for end users to be presented with 3 big icons that are clickable. I need something, something's not working, or I have a question. So here that tells them, okay, am I, without having to tell them, we're determining whether they have a service request or an incident, or they simply have a question, which would most likely be a service request, but easy for them to say, okay, nothing's not working, I need something. So they can click in here and go, okay, here are the different types of things I need. Do I need IT equipment, software, IT access? Is this for HR? Do I need onboarding or offboarding? And once I click that, I can see I actually need onboarding. So I've led the end user through this process. So now all they have to do is click on this form, fill it out, submit it, and then the workflow process can take over. I have all the information I need. I can automate what is applicable to automate, and you know, everything is good to go for there. And that's really the goal of having a self-service portal to be able to publish your service catalog to. So let's look at a couple of tips to help you drive self-service portal adoption. Because it's one thing to have a self-service portal for your end user to use, but that doesn't actually mean they're going to use it. A lot of folks are creatures of habit, and even though you would think that end users would find an SSP easier to and more efficient than a phone call or an email, sometimes you kind of need to provide a little nudge to drive portal adoption for efficiency's sake. So what we did is put together a couple of tricks that our clients have used to achieve success. So the first one, it kind of goes back to the previous slide that I mentioned, keep it simple. A simple, easy to navigate portal generally makes adoption easier to accomplish. Utilizing easy to understand pages and scoping your service catalog, one of the things that is great about Service Manager and the Cireson portal is you have the ability to scope your service catalog so that end users only see the service offerings and request offerings that concern them. So that keeps the whole quote-unquote drinking from the fire hose effect from turning users off of using a self-service portal and sticking with phones or email, right? Second tip is to get executive management buy-in. So this is kind of critical, to be honest with you. If not having executive and management buy-in to using a self-service portal to drive adoption to a self-service portal is really going to give you an uphill battle. So one of the things that you're going to have to do in this process is you're going to need to demo your self-service portal to these executive and management folks and show them how it brings value to their organization by making your department more efficient and making it easier and faster for people to get what they ask for, so they're not spending time dealing with IT as much as generating revenue, which is what they were brought in for. Once XCOM and management are on board, it'll be a lot easier to deal with any pushback that you might get from end users on using a self-service portal over making a phone call to the service desk or sending an email. Next thing that we've seen work is conducting a marketing campaign within the company. So this is an internal marketing campaign, and this doesn't necessarily have to cost any money. You can start by sending out emails to the organization with screenshots of the portal and examples of how the forms in the portal will get their attention, will actually get, attention to their requests quicker than an email or a phone call would. And one of the things I did in my former organization that other clients have done is you can actually record a video, and honestly, I did this using Skype for business. I just simply created a meeting, a Skype meeting that I was the only one in, and shared my screen and walked through and demonstrated how the self-service portal was going to help out people. And then what we did is posted that on on an intranet page for them to be able to, kept it under 5 minutes, something nice and easy, something, pretty quick that they didn't have to, spend a lot of time on, that wouldn't bore them to death, but that would show them the value of using a self-service portal versus continuing to send emails or call. And then finally, what a couple of clients that I've dealt with personally and other people have done is to adjust their SLA to encourage self-service portal use. And kind of how that works is by getting sign-off from the business. They adjusted the SLA so that the agreed upon response time is actually less for incidents and service requests that are submitted via the portal versus ones that are submitted by email or by a phone call. And there's different levels for each one. And this was justified by explaining that processing of requests was faster when using the portal, as some requests actually skipped level 1 triage, whereas others were automated, or both, and actually showing them how, because you're getting structured information and everything like that from Self-Service Portal, generally what's going to happen from an analyst side is when analysts pull up their queue, they're going to hit the tickets that came in through the portal first, because they know that the information they're going to need to either complete the service request or resolve the issue is going to be there, because, you know, time and effort was spent up front developing and asking the right questions for this. And so they're going to hit those faster because they're going to be easier to get through. Whereas things that come in via phone call, you know, maybe you get the same amount of information, but you're not sure whether that got structured, and, you know, obviously it had to go through the step of doing a phone call to get it done. And it's been my experience that the last thing people will go after as an analyst would be email, because everybody hates getting that email that says, this application's not working. Okay, that tells me nothing except the application that you're having an issue with. I've got no frame of reference. The first thing I know I'm going to need to do is go get more information, and then, you know, spend more time getting information I would have gotten had they used the portal to get the same resolution time. So again, what some people have done, you know, getting the business to agree with it, is to adjust the SLA to instead having the same SLA per type of service, is actually adjusting the SLAs a little bit to say if it comes through the portal, it's actually going to get a faster response time. So those are ways of being able to help drive adoption and be able to get something that you can really bring to the business that provides a lot of value. So once you have a service catalog, and once you have a self-service portal to be able to present the service catalog to the business, it doesn't mean you're done. Now you have to be continually examining the service catalog on maybe an annual, semi-annual, or even quarterly basis, depending on your company's current growth rate. Under here it says continual service improvement. Continual service improvement is an ITIL concept that at its core really depicts IT service management process as evolutionary, constantly moving through the life cycle of your IT services from design to retirement. The key is trying to maintain a pace of improvement that makes sense for your organization, matching the pace of progress and growth without being too ambitious just for ambition's sake. The most common points you're going to find in ITIL's recommendations for continual service improvement are starting off by gathering information, audit and trend analysis. So getting these reports in place and running these reports to see what services are being used, which services are trending down, and which services are beginning to show bottlenecks in their processes, and so on and so forth. And then once you have this info, hopefully you already have change management in place, but if not, it's really a good idea to adopt change management to be able to use that to go through the process of continual service improvement. So for services that are trending down, you can begin to plan their retirement. If a service is no longer providing the expected level of value to the business, it honestly doesn't make sense to have it continue to clutter up your service catalog. So put in a retirement process to begin to take that out of the service catalog. You know, if you go back to the ITIL definition, it's live environment. Services that are live and active in your environment. So many times the business will ask you to add new services, or you'll identify new services that add value to the business. So when that happens, what you want to do is come up with a plan to develop your forms and workflows, kind of what I showed you in the Excel spreadsheet, where everything fits. Test and retest, you know, any automation you put in there, anything like that. I would highly recommend user acceptance testing. And then finally, through change management, adding that service to the live catalog and updating the documentation. So not only putting it in like a self-service portal, but making sure that you have these documented. One of the biggest benefits of having a service catalog documented is when you get asked questions about what you do from auditing companies or whatever, maybe the company's going through an organizational change, maybe you have a merger or something like that. If you have this information there, it makes things a whole lot easier. The other thing it makes is whenever you're bringing new people on board in your IT organization, being able to hand them something that tells what you do really helps to get them oriented faster and begin providing services and value to the company instead of having to do a whole lot of training about what you do. And then lastly, you can continually look at automating your services where you can and where it's practical. Basically the less time that your analysts have to physically complete or shepherd something through the process of a workflow, the more time that they can spend on higher priority tasks and the more value you get for their time. So that's where automation comes in. And we have other videos in our Team Vimeo site on automating processes and services. So I highly recommend you check those out when you get a chance. And if there's something specific you'd like to see, then let us know. And if it makes sense, then maybe you'll see another webinar about how to do those from us. We're trying to do these kinds of things not only to show the value that Cireson brings and the value that Cireson brings to Service Manager and the value that Cireson brings to the service management and asset management and configuration management, but just trying to help out the IT community in general, because we're cool like that. So just kind of wrapping this up from a topical sense, having a mature, evolving service catalog really only adds value to what the IT organization brings to the business. And hopefully I've been able to show you that. Hopefully I've been able to show you how to get started if you haven't really started, where to begin, the steps you need to do to really mature your processes and mature your catalog to something that really provides the organization what it needs. So we're going to get to questions and answers in a minute, but just before we do that, I'd like to kind of show you a little bit about the Saracen community website. So what the Saracen community website, if you're not familiar with it, it's community.saracen.com, and what it is, it's kind of a forum-based website for our customers and our clients and System Center enthusiasts in general and our partners to be able to collaborate on helping each other out, solving problems. Our customers identify features and value that can be added to our products, so they submit features or requests and vote on them, and the entire community votes on them. And our product management teams actually take that very seriously. Our last release of our portal actually had a few of those feature requests added in. And it's just a great resource to be able to collaborate, to get information, to help you solve your problems, and just help make the organization better for everybody. So now we have reached the time in the process for question and answer. So if you have already been putting your questions in the GoToMeeting question window, one of my colleagues, Mike, has been on there. He may have been answering questions as we went. But otherwise, we're going to take the time to go ahead and get to your questions now. So let me pull this out so I can see it. And yeah, Mike's pretty much been keeping on top of it. Look at that. So we have a question. Will there be a recording of this available? Absolutely. This will be available out on our Vimeo website either by the end of the day, or it may take a day or two depending on kind of the workload of the marketing department to get it out there. So absolutely, it'll be out there. Let's see. Hang on, I'm pulling up my screen a little so I can see these better. Here's a good question. How does the business service differ from the service catalog? So a business service, and I'll bring up my and I'm going to talk about it from the context of Service Manager for the most part, but a business service in Service Manager is basically, again, it's not something that's limited to IT, so it's a complete business service, but it's also a mapping of all the components that configuration items that make up and touch and are parts of the business service. Now, the cool thing about having mapped business services is, especially around the area of change management, is you have the ability to determine whenever somebody asks for a change to a specific component to determine what pieces that those components touch. Whereas a service catalog is simply a listing of the services that are provided by IT to the business, why they're provided, the value they provide, and the parts that are included in that. So I hope that answered the question. One of the things that we are looking, or that I am looking into specifically, is now that from a business service standpoint, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the latest version of Operations Manager, but Microsoft actually bought a company that did dynamic application dependency mapping and has incorporated that, I believe, in the latest version of Operations Manager. So hopefully, I don't know if I put it in as a feature request in the forum, in the portal or the community website, but I will be putting it in as a feature request if I haven't, to actually see if we can get Cireson to build a connector to be able to import that information and build a graphical view of business services. What else do we have here? Can you go over the demo for dynamic forms capability? Yeah, I have a couple minutes. So basically in Cireson, and this is more of a Cireson specific thing rather than a just a service catalog overview type thing. But with Cireson, we have something in with our service management string called Advanced Request Offering. So inside of Service Manager, you have the ability to create these request offerings, which is a list of questions to be able to ask. And one of the out-of-the-box things about a request offering, and here I'll pull up onboarding as an example, is that all of the questions are a static list. So you have to think out your questions carefully, and all the questions have to directly apply to what you're doing, and they're all visible to everybody, so everybody sees it. With dynamic request offering, which is what this person's asking about, is something that Cireson provides that allows you to come in there and not only, you still ask a series of questions, but not all the questions show up. You can set up your questions to actually only show up depending upon the answers to previous questions. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to log in. I usually use onboarding for this example, and this won't take long. I go into onboarding. I put in first name, Ted, last name, Smith. Title's going to be accountant. And for those of you that I've done a demo for this before, you'll notice I pretty much use the same dude over and over again, and I apologize if that gets stale. So finance department, he's in this location. So we have select a start date. So let's say I pick a start date of the 30th. Well, all is great. That's fine. We can get it done by the 30th. But let's say I pick a start date of tomorrow. Now a box pops up and says this date's prior to the agreed upon SLA 4-day lead time. Please enter a business justification. This is what we mean by dynamic forms. This question didn't exist until they tried to weasel their way into having one day to set up a guy, set up his computer, set up his software, set up his access, set up his cubicle, whatever. So now we're wanting a business justification because they're outside of the SLA. So I'm going to use the usual justification. Sorry, I forgot. Click Next. And then you'll notice here under the equipment and access portion, I'm asking if they need a standard IT package or a la carte. So if they pick standard IT package, now I'm listing an IT package that they can get, and it lists everything that's included in that package. They select that, they're done, they move on, all good. But let's say they select a la carte. Now it's asking a different set of questions. It's asking which computer, do I want a docking station, iPhone, carrying case, software, access group, so on and so forth. So that's the dynamic piece. So what you get out of this as an example, one of the examples I like to use is out of the box with Service Manager, you would have a separate form for a mobile device request, a computer request, and maybe a server request or something like that. Now you can have one form that says request hardware equipment, and then the first question can be, do you want a mobile device, a computer, or a server? And then based on the answer to that, the question's tailored to that. So instead of having 3 different forms that I got to figure out which one I want to go to, I have one form that I can do. And that's what dynamic request offering or advanced request offering brings, as well as it also brings you the ability to map the answer to any question to any field in any work item in the workflow, in the templated workflow, which is another plus. And if you want more information about that, you can go to our website, you can request a demo, and we'll be happy to show you in depth what that looks like. So what else do we have? We have about 9 minutes left. What does the future for Service Manager and Cireson look? Is the future a cloud service? That's an interesting question. One thing I will say from the Service Manager standpoint is that while Microsoft really hasn't put a lot of time and energy into increasing the feature set of Service Manager, they have said that they're going to support it for some time to come. And I'm actually kind of glad about that because introducing new feature sets is something we do. One thing I can tell you is that we have actually seen an increase in people adopting Service Manager for the first time and going to that because, you know, with a lot of structured EAs and stuff like that, it's just the most cost-effective solution for what they're trying to do, especially when they couple it with our products that give them a better end user experience and more flexibility to mold their system around the way they want their IT to operate, the look, the feel, the customizations, all that kind of stuff. So as far as a cloud service goes, that's always going to be the question because the future still looks like cloud. Personally, you know, I think cloud adoption is increasing, but not increasing as fast as at least I expected it to be. So I think we'll get there. We do have partners that actually do host Cireson and Service Manager in the cloud now, but right now we're focused on bringing more value to System Center directly. How can you customize a portal? Do you have documents? I don't think we have any true documents. We have some KB articles, and might be able, my colleague that's answering questions may be able to add to this, but what we do have is webinar videos on customization examples that we've done on our Team Vimeo website, so have a look at those. There a lot of good stuff on that, and of course, you know, for high-level customization or for really in-depth customizations and things that people really want to get into, we also, you know, we do have a world-class group of consultants that do this all the time. As a matter of fact, they were the ones that, one of them was the one that gave me the example of how to build out basically going from a service that looked like, from an out-of-the-box experience to, this experience here. And honestly, it took me about 30 minutes to put this in. So we have examples of that. We're probably going to come up with more examples on how to customize. So, if customization and examples of customization is something that you think would really bring a lot of value, then that's a topic that we can look at putting in another webinar. Personally, I never get tired of learning on how to customize our stuff. I know we haven't gotten to every question on here. We're trying to get through as many as we can. And for those we haven't, we'll try to get back to you via email and let you know what's happening. But if there are any more questions, let us know. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today, for spending some time with us, and hopefully you got some value out of this. Hopefully it helped you really kind of focus on where you want to do to improve your service catalog or to get one started. And, again, if you have other questions, you saw my email address at the beginning of this, billy.wilson@saracen.com, and let us know. We'll try to help you out. All right, folks, really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time today, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Thank you very much.